Hey everybody, this is Petey from SpinRack, and today I'm doing another what if video. Well, before I get into all that, I'd like to thank everyone who has clicked on our promo. It was something I did a while ago. It was on our IG, but I don't think it made it to this page. So since the She-Hulk was out, I put it up there, and you guys supported, and they have a lot of views for that one. So thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. And let's move on to this what if. There's a couple what ifs I've done so far. You guys have been okay with them, so I do another one. There's a couple other things on tap that I want to do, but I think this one is kind of ready to go. So, all right, now let's do a what if. Like, who could actually have, say, at this period in the X-Men universe, it's what, 1983 or something like that. You got God Loves, Man Kills, X-Men graphic novel that was supposed to start out with Neil Adams, and Chris Claremont and Brent Anderson still knock it out the park. It's still one of many fans' favorite X-Men comic book. We also have the Uncanny run, the short run with Paul Smith, which is some of the favorites of many comic book fans, and he brought a lot to the table, Paul Smith. But it's kind of, as far as the X-Men, kind of the thing you look to when you kind of think of the new X-Men, because it kind of re-established the new X-Men in a different way. Whereas God Love Man Kill still had some of the stuff that was going on with Byrne and Claremont. In this Paul Smith run, you have stuff like Punk Storm, you have Kitty kind of pushing back against Professor Xavier, getting his legs, Nightcrawler's his Christianity, and Wolverine going to Samurai, which leads us to the Wolverine miniseries, right? So the Wolverine miniseries, kind of one of the biggest books of this period, right? It's one of the early miniseries that Marvel did with obviously Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, where they went on a bus ride and it kind of went to kind of talking out the plots, and they had a lot of fun. It was done by breakdowns by Frank Miller and Joe Rubenstein added finishing on this. So you had this period, and this is not to slight the New Mutants, but you also had the New Mutants out there at the same time, right? So this is kind of high as far as the X-Men stuff. The New Mutants, they would get their light, I think, in their second year, midway in their second year, or towards the end of their second year when it came to the Bill Sienkiewicz run, right? So you have this high point as far as the X-Men titles. Right? So what if at this point, Chris Claremont said, this is all I have to say for these characters. Maybe I'll come back at some later date. Who could replace them? Now, at the same time, I had to take some people off the table, right? Because even though I'm fans of, obviously, like one of my first choices would be Byrne. You can't slight Roy Thomas, who wrote the X-Men many years. He's writing for DC. He's someone that you could pull back and probably he would find a good way to do these characters. Possibly Lee Nguyen, who'd come in there. Maybe even Roger Stern, who was the editor of the X-Men. They all understand the X-Men dynamics. But, this is not kind of what I want and what I feel for the X-Men. This is what you fans want. And one of the things that the fans really liked was kind of Wolverine going from the Berserker to having this samurai aspect, which is kind of a 180 from what he was. Or Storm being this this lover of life against all killing, and then somehow becoming the punk rocker and kind of sicking Wolverine in one point, telling Wolverine to put his claws away, to sicking Wolverine on certain adversaries. Not to say it wasn't warranted. And as you go along, there will be these changes, like Kitty Pryde, obviously Cyclops getting married, Xavier, as I said, being able to walk. These sort of changes in the characters what people would see as evolution, but I would have to just call them changes. But fans, on a book that goes this long, kind of like that sort of aspect. And one of the other things is, like, Chris Claremont wasn't above kind of feeding off what was going on in the media and comic books and kind of meshing it into the X-Men. So when Micronauts kind of gets hot, well, no, let's go while Byrne was on the book, not only pulling in stuff from their past, there's Alien, and you get the Demon storyline. You also get the Micronauts kind of hit, and Cockrum comes back, and you kind of do a long cosmic kind of story, which you have some more alien type villains. You got the karate and samurai stuff. Shogun is out. You get the Wolverine miniseries. All this kind of stuff is kind of really on the influence of Chris Claremont. And then finding these different aspects of the character that are kind of doesn't go along with what we know about them or what's in their character, but kind of just the new X-Men are kind of characters that really can tack on different things, like Kitty Pryde becoming a ninja herself and into Shadow Cat and that sort of thing. So who would be a good choice, right? So I've gone, let me stop this for a second. I've gone and said that I put a lot of great talent off the table, right? So instead of them, well, I'm not even going to go through that, because you could say, I don't know, the British invasion hadn't really gotten, I think it was around 85 or something like that. So you can't really bring in Alan Moore, but you really kind of need someone. Who else? I guess J.M. Mateus, that sort of thing. He might be close enough, but there's one person I would say is really in the vein of someone that could really give the fans what they were kind of looking for in what Chris Claremont was giving the X-Men. So this is just saying that Chris Claremont, what if he just decided, you know what, I did the X-Men, these books are going to be remembered here, and I'm going to leave and take my talent to another title and make that like the X-Men, and maybe he goes into bigger success or something like that. But someone who could keep the X-Men going, kind of have that same energy, and kind of bring the X-Men to what it became, the $8 million sales with Jim Lee, the cartoon, all of that stuff. We have to think about how we can get the Massacre, all this stuff that would really feed the X-Men to really get to it, to be a franchise with multiple titles and all of that stuff. So I'm going to give you someone that kind of gives you that sort of feel, that gives you distant aspects, just small aspects, right? And I'm going with Bill Mantlo, right? I'm going to say Bill Mantlo, what if he took over the X-Men? And I'm going to show you in stories that he did, just short pieces, to kind of say this guy would be kind of the guy to be the next X-Men writer, right? So Bill Mantlo is from Hulk fame. He's, of course, from Micronauts fame. So if you're a Micronauts fan, there's group stuff. He also did Alpha Flight, So he had a long stay in Marvel. Obviously, he had some health conditions. I think he had an injury, and that kind of took him out of comics. But he was a mainstay at Marvel, outside of some, I guess, slight controversies with Harlow Nelson and Barry Windsor Smith. He'd been on with Marvel for a very long time. But I'm going to show you a couple of books that are right in the vein of what Chris Claremont was doing. So the first one is this. Let me fix my thing, right? So we have, this is while Claremont was doing the X-Men. Marvel team up Spider-Man and the X-Men, and they fight the Lords of Light and Darkness. And have you heard that before? Yes, later on, Chris Claremont would use that for the Phoenix and call her the Child of Light and Darkness. So that kind of, as a kid, I kind of always thought that Chris Claremont wrote that. So I was thinking of the Lords of Light and Darkness and him using the name again. But having Mantlo being the one who kind of made that up is interesting, at least to me. right? So it kind of says, hey, maybe this guy could be the one, right? Because he not only, and he did a couple other X-Men appearances that are kind of memorable for, you know, what we know, what we remember for the X-Men, right? So next, what do I have? I have the hybrid storyline, right? Now I had this as a kid. We had this classic cover, which is by Frank Miller and Terry Austin. It feels like it's a lot of Terry Austin. This is right after the Demon storyline, so it's kind of picking up that the kids just want more and more of this stuff. So this was, the insides was drawn by Sal Buscema. It didn't matter at that point. The X-Men were just rolling, and this one was just as fun as the Demon storyline. So, do I have any other pictures of this? Well, we go to the next one. But this is a two-parter with the X-Men where they're going head to head with actually Hybrid kind of able to disguise Rom as himself. So the X-Men Wolverine is fighting Rom, and Kitty Pryde is in a hard place where she has to make the final decision to actually take out Rom and Hybrid to stop Hybrid, right? So and that sends Rom to limbo. But that's, see how you can have something where you had the same sort of arc that Kitty was going through, where Kitty is the one who has to save the day, where she realizes she can use his Rom's gun that gets rid of the Diras and uses it to get rid of Hybrid. It doesn't kill Rom, but kind of, and that sort of storytelling is really what Chris Claremont is known for, right? So let's keep going, right? We have another Rom issue, which is Rom versus the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And this would be Rogue's really coming out party, right? Because Rogue in this issue looks very matronly. She looks a lot older. I wouldn't say matronly is going a little too far, but say she's in the more of a cougar stage. But as they're writing it, they're saying she's the youngest member. So it's kind of something that never really translated in the early Brotherhood storylines, but they're keeping the thread that I think before, and I don't know how much Magneto talked to Chris Claremont, but that same sort of writing it as if she was 17, even though she looks like a cougar, someone who's like 45 or something like that, to be nice, right? So here we go. So we have a bit in here where Rogue kissed Rom, and she sensed the nobility, and some of that, even though she wasn't able to take his powers, she kind of was able to have a heroic moment. And this would lead to directly the next storylines, well, the next arc for Rogue, where she would go from being someone who was out to kill Dazzler, someone who was out to kill Carol Danvers in 2 X-Men issues, no, 1 Avengers 10, and then X-Men, I think it's like 158 or something like that, where she tried to kill Carol Danvers again. So with this moment where she's the hero of the storyline, she gains some of Rom's nobility, even though she doesn't gain any of his powers, which is kind of wacky. But that's kind of something that gets you that X-Men, that Claremontian type of storytelling, right? So this would be the first kind of noble Rogue having the, like chip past that mean exterior to get to the Rogue that we, that everyone from kids who watch the cartoons to the long stay they like her being a teen, even though she didn't join the New Mutants if she was a teen, and that sort of stuff. So so we have that story. Let's keep going. And then we have the collaboration between Chris Claremont and Bill Mantlo, which is the X-Men and the Micronauts. So he has some experience doing some mini-series with the X-Men. So this is kind of what the X-Men really like to do. You know, we had with Jackson Geist doing the drawing. He was, at that period, was very similar to Michael Golden, but you know, we had, this is post the what was it? What run was that? This is post the Paul Smith run, so you have the Punk Storm in here, right? So you have this. You don't have Cyclops running around. So this is one of those things where he already had time with the X-Men, so he kind of understands these characters, at least in my opinion, right? So let's keep going, right? So he's already got 4 issues under his belt outside of doing them in ROM. And then we have the big one, right? Vision and Scarlet Witch, right? This would be the storyline where this would be the storyline where Magneto comes to see his grandson. He realizes who his kids are. He's been tracking Magda, and he tracks her to Bova, and he almost kills Bova to find the information. He gets it out of her, and then he becomes Noble Magneto. So he has that side, but in this one, only difference is he does something mean and nasty to Bova. But when he gets to the moon, he's very much the Noble Magneto, and he talks about what he's been through. And in this is the first early retcon of Magneto, where they say, instead of what happened, that Magda told a story that she gained powers, and when Magneto gained powers and went mad, he was actually fighting it back against the Nazi soldiers in Auschwitz, and then she ran away, got frightened by his powers. So that would be like similar to like Iceman when he used his powers to help his girlfriend and she ran away. So that wasn't for me, but everybody loves this bit. And to see one of the early retcons is by Bill Mantlo, right? So this kind of shows you that this guy kind of does the retcons that people like. You know, he's fighting against, you know, the German soldiers and all that. And that's like, you have a good reason why he would, you know, well, not a good enough reason why but it's a good enough reason for the fans to believe he would become Magneto and have this vendetta against humanity, since the Germans had, but he kind of is a little too similar, but fans like it. So, and they hear that story, and they're not sure what to do with it, right? So it would be wrong to be treating them bad. Let's move on. I think Roger Stern kind of had them still have issue with him, which was kind of totally forgotten, because the retcon is stronger than what Roger Stern was doing. So this is what I'm saying. This type of storyline is what a lot of fans like. So Bill Mantlo was also a part of this. You can see this story is different from the one that Chris Claremont did, but instead of, you know, and Chris Claremont added a lot of back and forth with Magneto's powers, but this is kind of pushing him. And Chris Claremont already said that Magneto was in Auschwitz, but him fighting against German soldiers is something that you know, is really leading Magneto in the way of what you fans kind of like, right? So lastly, we go to the Alpha Flight, right? This would be him handling the X-Men for a short period here, where they meet, this is Mike Mignola doing the art. He doesn't do the insides on Sal Buscema, Bill Mantlo's longtime collaborator. They move from the Hulk to Alpha Flight. This storyline was Guardian. Oh, no, she's Vindicator. Heather Hudson. She's going to seek out Wolverine, and Magneto thinks of her as an enemy and shoots her down. Wolverine is like, he's gonna, you know, take care of things, and it leads to Wolverine's history, right? So he's handled the X-Men again, right? And in this, there's some changes This part is similar. With Wolverine is some wild man out in out in the woods while they're going hunting, and then Wolverine, who's tied down, he's revealed to have these claws. Now this is a retcon, right? In Byrne's second issue, I think the third issue, Wolverine has claws, and he's a part of Department H, and it's something that what was it that Mac he to whatever was his history. I'm thinking the one that Byrne kind of did was came up with that Wolverine was kind of in a bad way with his bones, like the classic mutant with having some sort of issue. His healing factor didn't work on his bones, and he gets injured, and then Wolverine gets these replacement bones with what happened in Department H, right? So instead of that, Wolverine's already has the claws in there, but we don't know how he got them. And he doesn't know how he got them. But somehow Mac knows. Mac has done something in part of this, and he kind of brought Heather out here to calm her down. So this is a complete retcon of what we saw in the X-Men and we saw in the early Alpha flights. But this kind of has been been canon since it was introduced, and this is by Bill Mantlo, right? And then we have the next storyline, which is Wolverine and Guardian versus Lady Deathstrike, and Lady Deathstrike is after the adamantium skeleton, which is supposed to be her father's, right? And this ties into, I think, the Kitty Pryde and Wolverine's thing. So we got Lady Deathstrike. I'm not sure if we talked to Chris Claremont, but that's very Claremontian, having the Lady Deathstrike, having this samurai character. Obviously, Chris Claremont would add so much to her with Barry Windsor Smith. Right? Do I have any other pictures in here? Let's see, anything else? I think that's it, right? So there we have it. We have Lady Deathstrike. We have a retcon of Wolverine's origin. We have Magneto's retcon of what happened to him. We have Rogue going to the side of the angels, having his moment, and talking about her as a teen, though she looks older. The Lords of Light and Darkness, and the Rom storylines, which with the X-Men, which were kind of right in line with what was going on in the X-Men. So I think, and Bill Mantlo is someone who draws from what's going on at the time, so I could see him looking at the X-Men and kind of getting that the X-Men is kind of book where you create characters, you kind of add stuff to them, you tack things on, similar to how he did with Puck, changing Puck's his origin, even though I'm not saying this is something that would be for me, but the way fans like the X-Men, if you look at it post what was it? You had the Kitty Pryde story where you get some more of the samurai stuff in there. At the same time, there's a lot of mercenary stuff going on at Marvel. The X-Men get mercenary stuff in there where they have the massacre, stuff like that. They fight against, for the longest time, they're fighting against mercenaries, especially during the Silvestri run. And then you also have Thor gets hot. Then you have a whole slew of X-Men issues where they're in Asgard, and then the New Mutants go back there too. So this is kind of in line with X-Men storytelling. So I kind of think for you fans and for Marvel, someone that could take it and take the torch and lead it to the 8 million sales that Jim Lee did. So, and I think the way Byrne would kind of do it, that would be the person who kind of keep it back to being mutants, even though if you look at his Elsewhere, he's kind of at the period where the X-Men aren't doing totally all mutant stuff. Kind of he would probably bring it back to having more mutant stuff in there. So there we go. I think that kind of tells you why I believe Bill Mantlo would probably be a decent person for you fans to give you that book that you wanted. And you would be having the stuff where you'd find more stuff out about the characters as you went along. There would be pieces and bits, even if the pieces and bits don't jive with what happened before, like Storm being a character who was in Kenya and didn't understand stuff like clothing and a whole bunch of stuff. And then when you see her actual origin, she's in Harlem. So it's just like, didn't she have clothes in Harlem? And she's also in Cairo. So it's this thing of kind of being a little backwards. Doesn't always work because I got this light at the top of my head. So we saw it before. But anyway, there you go. The X-Men, possibly Chris Claremont passes the torch and decides he did it. Ending on top, even though he had, I think the Genosha story is kind of the next thing that people like. Obviously, you have to give him credit for the Magneto story with Jim Lee getting to 8 million. But and the success of doing the crossovers, right? So you got to get someone that's going to get you all of that stuff. And obviously, Mantlo has done a bunch of crossover with characters. We'd see, I don't know how it will go, but we could see how it goes. All right, SpinRack out.